Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Pete Tigers. We're out today. We're going to be fishing. I'm doing something that I promised and vowed I'd never do again. Some 25 plus years ago, I did really well in the Trout Masters competition and qualified at my local fishery. And I used to swing buzzers it was a small still water, and I used to swing buzzers and just gently figure of eight them as they came round with the wind. And then sometimes I'd set on a fish. The night before that competition, I figured they're going to be stocking the lake. I'm going to tie up some huge, great lures and rip them through the water. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't do very well. I could sense already the tension in the car park of people who wanted to go on to the final. I think it was probably at Rutland that year. And you could sense it. And it wasn't that friendly. There was just a little nod from other anglers. And then we set about business. And I ripped these flies through the water and didn't qualify. And I just didn't enjoy it. And I vowed that I would never do a competition again. But getting to know Rodney and Jethro at Fluffchuckers, I'm here at Chew this morning, and there is a multi-species event, and they told me it was really, really good fun. It was more sociable than anything else. So I'm going to give it a go today. The idea is to try and catch a rainbow trout, a brown trout, a perch and a pike. And there's prizes and for the numbers of fish caught, size of fish caught, variety, the first fish caught. There's all sorts of things going on. I'm already prepared for the wooden spoon. I've got about, 3 pike flies and 12 buzzers and some dial backs and some things like that. I haven't got a great deal, but I'm just going to go and have fun. I'm going to fish the way that I promised I would fish in that competition all those years ago. So I'm going to try that. I've got some lines that I think might work for me. They're sort of tips, and there's an intermediate line that I've not used for a long time. All sorts of different stuff I'm going to try. I'm really excited that I'm going to be sharing the boat with my friend Ben Jailer, who you'll know from the podcast, author and writer. So I think we're going to have some fun there. So I'm really looking forward to this aspect of it. It's been an early start. I had to get up ridiculously early for the meeting. So we're going to learn a little bit more. And I'm going to take you fishing for the day on this competition. Let's see if things change for me and if my thoughts about competitive fishing change. So Jethro from the Fluffchuckers team, we're at Chew. Can you tell listeners a little bit about the multi-species event that we're about to undertake this morning?
I'm glad you called it an event, Pete, because it's an event rather than a competition. I think that's as much as there is this competitive element, I think it's kind of light-hearted and fun, and you get a sense of that in the car park. I mean, there's some serious people here, but it's definitely a nice social gathering. It's just something that we came up with. Rodney and I have got different stories. I'm sure I came up with it, but I don't remember he was telling everyone he came up with it. Oh, here it is. Rodney's just turning up with, trying to figure out who started who came up with the competition idea. I thought it was me, but you thought it was you.
I think it was me.
We've got a competition already, so we're off to a winner there.
Between Rodney and I, we came up with this idea that, God, wouldn't it be interesting to come to Chew and try and catch all 4 species, particularly when the perch were as wild as they were around the jetties. And you'd always pick up the odd brown, and then obviously it's stocked with rainbows, and then you've got the pike. So we just thought, well, what about if we just get a group of people together and see who can actually get on here and catch all 4 in a day, and a bit of fun, a bit light-hearted, and that's what all the Fluffchuckers events are about. There's an element of competition. We've got some nice prizes from the sponsors, but really it's just a chance to kind of socialise and spend a bit of time with some like-minded fishermen.
And fantastic. And Rodney, you've been wandering around handing out all the bits and pieces. And this is sort of for me, I think how our boat's going to play out, that Ben, I think, will be the organised person that you've been. And I'm watching Jethro set his stuff up, which is very similar to mine. And there's a knotted fly line, a knackered reel. I'm exactly the same. I've got about 3 flies and that's about it. And I'm going to give it a good go. But it feels as though, and we're only in the car park at the moment, but it does feel as though there's a great camaraderie, excitement, and I termed it event, and it's on all sorts of different levels. There's people like myself just here for a bit of fun, but there's also the serious aspect of it, but it filters across a broad spectrum of things. You must be really pleased about that.
Yeah, I'm extremely pleased how this has gone really over, 5 years. It's grown and grown. I think the first year we only had 7 or 8 boats, 16 anglers, and now we're best part of 50 anglers, and they all get in the spirit of it. And some are mega competitive, but not that many. Out of all of them, the majority just want to be here and have a good day, and that's what it's all about.
It's those Cornish boys you've got to watch out for.
The Cornish boys. They come up and they're like pirates, and they've never really lost that from years ago, and they'll be going home with a lot of the gold, I expect. They do most years.
All you need to do is varnish up that wooden spoon for me anyway, so I'm fully expecting to collect that at the end of it, so that's absolutely fine. And this isn't the only event. You guys do put on a number of events as well throughout the year, don't you?
Yes, we were doing a similar event with perch, zander and pike on Graffham, but I haven't done that this year, but we will revisit that. We also do a brown trout, and that's grown from a single one on Colliford to now it's a series with Southwest Lakes, and where we're doing 3 and the last round's in 2 weeks' time on Roadford. So that's a combination between Fluffchuckers, Southwest Lakes Truss. And with odd little things, we've just done an introduction day on carp, sight fishing carp, without actually feeding them with biscuits or bread at Sutton Bingham. And that was in conjunction with Wessex Waters, so they could get a few more people on the water when the trout season was at its worst in August, really, with the bright sun. Good take up with that. We also do some introduction days on the Somerset levels for pike fishing and handling welfare and tips on how to catch them. So yeah, we're involved in something all the time.
Busy men. And how can people find you guys?
Everything goes through the Facebook page, really, more than anything. So just look up Fluffchuckers. I know the Instagram's a bit less active, but the Facebook community's busy. There's always stuff going on, designed to be a place that people can just share their catches, share some stories, ask for advice. It's all just about community, fundamentally, and that's what everything we do is about. And Rodney's, we both really, I guess, have really fostered that over the years, and hopefully we get a sense of that today.
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I guess my plan is that it was cold. I was surprised how chilly it was early on, and I think I'm going to go deeper and slower. That doesn't mean that's correct, but for the trout perspective. And then I'm kind of thinking in my mind, do I go pike first, try and catch a pike, and then move on to the trout? Are my odds better there? I suspect you're like me, that you have absolutely no plan. You're just going to rock up and see what happens.
Yeah, I follow my nose. Rodney and I will get out there and see what happens. I think pike early on is probably it's always a reasonable shout, potentially, if you want a bigger one. So head over towards Stratford and see what's happening. There were a load of fish topping over here, out in front of the lodge. I assume perch and trout. So they're there and about. I don't know. I'm not sure how to catch the rainbow. It's not my speciality. But we'll see. The jetties will be busy. There's definitely frying under there, roach, and that obviously brings in everything. So if you went and sat there with an 8-weight and pulled a snake through, I think you could pick up all 4 fish. To be honest, that might be as good a bet as any. But I think let's Stratford and go and try and catch a big pike to start with.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to give it a try. I'm waiting for Ben. I haven't found him yet. He's perhaps in the car park somewhere. I'm hoping he's there, and I can lean on his expertise a little bit, and we'll see what happens. So I've managed to find Ben, my captain in the car park. So we're talking strategy. The rough idea I get from this is that we don't have one, my captain, do we?
No, I think we're very much putting ourselves in the hands of fate, and particularly you putting your potential health and safety and well-being in, what is essentially the captain of the Titanic. I have fished a few comps this year, but, normally I defer to the kind of more experienced boatmen. But some comps, you have to take the engine. So I kind of vaguely know what I'm doing and where we can go. But Chew has been fishing not very well. I think for a long time there's been problems with water quality. So I think rainbows might be a struggle, but yeah, loads of perch in here. normally when I'm fishing for rainbow trout, just all I ever do is catch pike on, sort of red dull bags and things like that. So, hopefully we should be able to pick up a pike. I think the tricky one is going to be the brown trout, because I don't think they're stocking brown trouts anymore. But again, sometimes putting on a big pike, flying over the pike, that's a good way of picking up the big rainbows and the big brownies.
And what do you think? Do you think we should probably look for a pike first, get that out of the way, and then concentrate on the trout stroke perch? Or have you got any idea of what you think would be the best strategy?
I think if we go for the pike first, because that's your chance of picking up a big rainbow or a big brownie. I'm probably going to string up, I think a die 5 short leader, maybe something like a humongous booby, and just sort of twitch that along the bottom for some perch. And it just sounds like much more fun fishing for perch. I mean, as I said, I've fished a lot of comps this year, and they call it grinding, where you just go repeating the same drift over and over again, chucking the flies out, flogging the water, and just hoping that some ridiculous fish is, despite the conditions, despite everything that's against you, something's going to pop up and take your flies. So just the feeling of fishing for something that's kind of a bit more active, that's kind of quite appealing. And of course, perch, they hold such a sort of special place in people's hearts, because most of us start off as coarse fishers, and that was my first fish on the Grand Union Canal at Fenny Stratford. So yeah, it'd be nice.
Fantastic. Well, I think we're all starting to gather, and I think Jethro and Rodney, one of the things they said was about community, and there's certainly a sense of that there. Across a broad spectrum, I've seen fish finders, I've seen all sorts of stuff so far, boat seats and everything, and I feel badly unprepared, but I find that kind of fun as well, and it means that I'm not a competitive person. I'm not taking it too seriously from that point of view. I think I'm really looking forward to having some time in the boat with Ben and just having some fun, and let's face it, that's what it's all about. There'd been some talk that there was some fry around the jetty where the boats were kept, and so most of the people started off around there. Ben and I mooched around for a bit in Woodford Lodge and tried to grab a coffee, but they weren't open. We even talked about a fried breakfast at one stage with a sort of gentleman competition anglers, but most of the boats were congregating around there. But Ben had some intel that we headed down to an area I think it's called the Rocks, and have been round there. We've mixed things up. He's fishing a sinking line, trying to pick up some trout potentially and anything else that might come along. I went out for the pike. My thought was that if I can get one of those out the way, that gets me one of the species, and then I can play around with the browns and the rainbows and perhaps even a perch. I've sort of ruled out the chances of me catching a perch, but I thought I'd try that one. For me, at least, I thought the pike would be the hardest one. We've been sort of setting up some drifts, and Ben has been a skillful skipper, and we've worked along there, having 2 or 3 drifts. The boats are starting to spread out now, and there's a few more. We sort of were alone, going out on our own to do what we wanted to do, which I kind of liked as well, I have to say. But I don't know that I've seen anything happening. There's no intel, absolutely no idea. But we've just been talking about all sorts of stuff. We've talked about football, we've talked about films, we've talked about books, and of course fishing. And Ben's been doing a fair bit of competition fishing this year as well. So it was interesting to learn what he's been up to, what he's been doing, how that's affected his fishing. But it's been fun so far this morning, mate, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's good. The weather's quite fair. I mean, it was a cold start. The sun's out. Again, the water quality doesn't look great here, but hopefully that won't affect the sort of coarse fish too much. I mean, your pike fly is standing out amazingly in the water, so I don't think the pike will have any trouble seeing it. Yeah, as Pete said, we've been fishing on a spot called Nunnery, where I guess they've sort of made, there's these sort of stone cages to protect the bank from erosion, and that's normally a good spot for perch and pike. But, the jungle drums are beating. Should I be saying this? I've just received a WhatsApp message from my deep throat who's just tipped me off that we should be using white snakes. So I've got a mini white snake, which I know is a really good fly for me at Mystery Gentleman's Lake for the rainbows and brownies. Might even interest a pike as well. So I think I'm going to open up my dirty box shortly and get some snakes on. Snakes in the boat, as Pete said.
And I've switch things up a little bit. And again, the things we talked, I've put the pike rod down for a bit, but funnily enough, before the message, I said to Ben, I fancy perhaps a pink snake, and that might cover a number of bases. And so I've set up with a 9.5 foot 7 weight, and then I've got a floating line, but I don't know how many density lines. So I put I think it's a 3 inches per second tip on to see if that'll get me down a little bit deeper. And I've been working that through the water. So it may be that we change to the white snakes and give it a go from there. But just bobbing around in the boat's been great fun. I'm waiting. My phone's just pinged while we've been talking. Emma's gone out. The river's dropped back. So she's gone out for salmon. So I'm hopeful that perhaps something has happened there. So it's all very, very good. We've got plenty to eat, and we're going to enjoy that aspect of it. And as the guy said, Rodney and Jethro, it's fun, and I'm having fun. I'm really enjoying it. And I've just seen something move just behind Ben as well. So nice to see that. And I just wondered, the sun's out now. It was pretty cold. I think it was 4 or 5 degrees when I turned up first thing this morning. And I'm wondering if fish might move up the column a little bit as the sun warms it. But we'll have to wait and see. But I think the interesting thing for me, at least, is the water clarity, as Ben says. And it's sort of algaly, if that's a term, and doesn't look fantastically clear. So, yeah, I think we need something possibly with black or a little bit brighter so that the fish at least get to see it. And I'm thinking about retrieve speeds. I'm no expert on big expanses of water, but as an angler, I'm thinking about the ability of the fish to be able to see the fly. So they're things that are going through my mind, and the speed that I need to bring it through the water. Does it need to be a little bit slower? I'm somebody who likes to move a fly quickly through the water because I just like the take when somebody hits it. But I'm wondering, with the clarity of the water, perhaps I need to move it a little bit more slowly. So there are all these sorts of things that are kicking in, and it's an interesting test, I'm finding, because I'm so far out of my comfort zone. I just don't really know a whole deal about what I'm doing. But Ben, talking about the comp stuff, have you found that's made you think differently, change as an angler in any way?
Yeah, well, I think it's horses for courses. It's such a completely different mindset and a different way of fishing. And I think everyone I've spoken to who comps, they do say that it's the best way to kind of learn quickly, and pick up tips from these guys, people who fished for England, who've got multiple caps, people who fished Chew Valley or Blagden for, 40, 50 years. And it's just things like a lot of it is kind of, perseverance, obviously, pleasure angling. You can pick your day when you want to fish if the weather looks dodgy, or if the wind is in the wrong direction, you could choose to fish somewhere else where you're going to find some shelter. But, with comping, if you've committed to fishing on a certain day, that's it. You've got to fish that day. You've got to fish that conditions, and you're going to be on the water from 10 o'clock till 5:30 with your partner, and there's no quitting, and there's no getting out. But it's just it's funny because even being out here now, obviously it's a competition, but it's not a serious competition. But what I do is, you know who the sort of top rods are. You make a note of their boat number. So, obviously Jethro's the man. So made a note of his boat number. So, a tactic is, if you don't have a plan for yourself, you follow the top rods and see what they're doing. From their retrieve, you can tell whether they're on a float or a sinker or what they're doing. And invariably they'll know where the fish are. So follow those guys, and hopefully they should lead you to it. But you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it catch a fish. And ultimately, what the old Spanish saying that the sun shines on a dog's arse at least once a day, and in the comping the sun has shone on my arse. But it was luck where I've just stumbled across some fish and filled my boots for an hour and a half. And that's kind of got me up the rankings. But the good fishermen are kind of, they're consistently good. They can catch when no one else is catching. And, sometimes you might look on paper and say the difference between, a top 10 finish and being in the bottom 10 is only 2 or 3 fish. But in terms of the golf and class, to get that extra 2 or 3 fish, yeah, it's massive. And some of these guys I've fished with, they're so good. They're class, and they're absolutely freaking mad because I've fished in some absolutely horrendous conditions. But they're just they're out doing it. They come to the jetty, they cast, they swear they'll never ever do it again. Next week, bang, they're doing it again, and they'll be there again, next year.
And so that makes me wonder about this sort of addiction aspect of it. And I was watching a documentary with Dave Grohl the other night, and he does a tour and says, right, I'm never doing it again. And all his friends say, yeah, of course. And then, of course, he sits with the guitar on his lap, writes a few songs, and then they're back on tour again. And this has been a season of doing this. Does that mean that you're going to do it again? Is it something that's bitten you and is going to make you keep coming back, or is it one and done?
If you would have asked me at Sunday 6 o'clock in the evening, as I came off the water after fishing a 2-day comp with 2 days of practice in cold northeasterly winds, no one catching, thunderstorms on the Saturday right over our head. I've never shit myself in my life so much. And then Sunday, biblical rain, soaked the underpants within 20 minutes, and then sort of, pre-hypothermic for the next 6 hours. If you'd asked me to come to the water, I just came off. I was ready to burst into tears. It's the hardest thing. Obviously I've lived quite a sheltered life. There's more serious things going on, but it's the hardest thing I've ever done because, we can all reach our limit, and it is okay to quit. Some people might say not, but with this you can't quit, because if you're with a boat partner, if you go in, your boat partner has to go in. They can't fish by themselves. So I think I had a sense of achievement from the endurance aspect, of seeing it through to the bitter end. And if you would have asked me then, Ben, you're going to go out next year again, I would have probably shot you or shot myself. But within about 2 days, it's weird. Someone posted on one of the Facebook pages, heard the weather was rough in the competition. What were people wearing to stay dry? And there were some suggestions as to, good manufacturers, good makes of wet weather gear. And even then I'm thinking, wow, if I spent, 700 quid on a Kelly Hansen round the world sailing suit, then that would have taken out the discomfort of the last 2 days. And if I was not pre-hypothermic, if my underpants were dry, maybe I would be able to fish better. And then, of course, Facebook had been quiet during the comp, but once it started again, the local fishermen started posting about where they've been catching fish and what they've been using. And I'm thinking, if only I would have known about that fly, if only I would have contacted that guy, maybe fished with him, a month before the comp and really get to know the water. So it's almost like I'm paving the way to go back out there again next year, which I cannot believe, because it was just the most ball-achingly awful thing I've ever done. So, Pete, if you do hear me mention I'm about to, shell out for some, some comping tickets and some practice days and accommodation and some new gear and a petty box, then just feel free to take me back and shoot me.
That I can do, my friend. That I can do. We bumped into Rodney and Jethro. They're both caught pike and perch each, and that sort of sharpens things up a little bit. We've moved up the lake a little bit further. We've been 3 or 4 drifts, and Ben's put on a different intermediate, changed things up, and is just currently playing a rainbow. So I'm thrilled to say, and we were just saying it would be really nice if we had something in the net, which I'm absolutely thrilled that Ben's done that. Good work, my friend. Thank you. So that's 2.5, 2, something like that, isn't it? I'm the worst person to ask about weights of fish, but he's had a rainbow trout. So the boat, the good ship fly culture, is off the mark due to Ben's skills, which is fabulous news. So it may well be that I might throw back on the trout stuff and see. There might be some more trout in the area, so I'm going to give that a go and go from there. Just about to head out on another drift. Ben, short time after the last fish, caught another one, and so I've switched to trout kit now as well. I've got a small mini white snake on. Not had any joys, just had a yank off something. We've seen a few fish start to move. Every moment the wind actually eases, the water gets flat, the buzzers hatch. Ben spotted a fish behind us, which I tried to cover. And I'm this is where my experience, and I'm lucky having Ben with me, my experience is coming through because I'm starting to play through scenarios in my mind now. Should I fish a couple of buzzers perhaps, or some dialbacks or something along those sorts of lines and move those through the water? The fish are clearly higher in the water. Do I think about the washing line? And these are things that are starting to go through my head now, but I'm thrilled that there's a couple of fish to the boat, which is great news. So yeah, I'm going to keep cracking on, I think. Feels like we had a brief window of activity. The clouds came over, the wind eased a little bit. We saw a few fish move, not a lot, but Ben did magnificently well and caught a couple of rainbows, and then some guys sort of came in front of us and caught a fish as well, which was nice for them. It feels like it's gone a bit quiet now though, Bud, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's that kind of mid part of the day, but there's a lot of insect life about, and I think we're just really going to work our way around the lake in a anti-clockwise fashion around the back of Denny. We'll try North Shore. I think have a drift onto the dam, which I've heard is where the rainbows are at the moment, and then don't tell anyone, but there's a secret spot just up from the sailing club where there's a concrete outlet pipe, and that tends to hold all the coarse fish, so that might be good for a sort of pike and a perch. And then kind of last try on the jetty, I think, Pete, because again, we had a little wing from Jethro as well, that they picked up some perch there as well. So yeah, we've got a plan. I think it's just about, covering water and literally putting your flies across a fish's nose, because again, I don't know how would we describe the visibility. It's kind of dysentery brown. It's not pretty by any stretch. So yeah, we'll keep on plugging away. And again, this is comping. It's grinding. Staying in the game, covering lots of water, and when you find some fish, stay on them.
Sage advice there. We were chatting about lots of things. Ben had been out last night and watched a favourite band of his, the and enjoyed that. And we were talking about the creative process generally, and it suddenly dawned on us that his book, Fish Camp Fail, that I think I probably interviewed him just as it was coming out or had just come out. And how does that feel now, 2 years further down the line? Is it sort of the process has been done and that's sort of kind of forgotten about now, and then you start thinking about fishing and other things as well? Or is it sort of kind of in the back of your mind? Do you think sometimes that, oh, I could have done this with it, I could have done that, or when you sent that off and you published it, that you were perfectly happy and you're perfectly happy with where it's sitting at the moment and have enjoyed that whole process?
Yeah, I think that's a kind of interesting one, because blimey, it's twofold. Because watching the gig last night, obviously it's they've got a back catalogue going back to the 80s, and it's funny because Matt Johnson he does sing a lot of songs about his personal relationships, and he's singing songs about breakups with partners, or maybe how he hasn't treated someone very well, going back 30-40 years. So I was kind of watching that and thinking it must be strange for him. Does he kind of relive it? Does the song still have a relevance, or is he sort of going through the motion? But I think anything you produce, it's a product of the time that it was produced. So I'm always a little bit wary, like Oasis coming back and doing this comeback tour. There's a zeitgeist that creates, whether it's, music, writing, films. So, rebooting TV series, remaking films, bands coming back after 20 years hiatus. There's a kind of lack of relevance there because you're not part of that zeitgeist. And I just think with Fish Camp Fail, it was a result of a particular place I was at, mainly paranoid as fuck, because the gist of that was I was pretty much a reservoir fisherman, bit of a townie at heart, and that desire to put a backpack on, just get into the arse end of nowhere, kind of expose certain vulnerabilities, namely horror obsessions, framing stuff by what I've seen on horror films, letting your imagination run wild of you, and basically a pathological fear of werewolves. So I kind of look back on that, and it was of its time. I think the fishing adventures I've probably had in the last 18 months, kind of coming from a slightly different place, not out of that sort of that weird sort of paranoia or fear. And I don't think that's something I'd go back to. But it was of its time. I was kind of flicking through it, the other day, because I was going to send a copy to someone I shared a boat with when I was doing some comping, which I think you might quite enjoy it. And yeah, I really like it. It still has that kind of relevancy, and I guess it was a product of the pandemic and COVID as well. That was a sort of strong backbone for it. But yeah, once it's done, I mean, Pete, even with you with Fly Culture, once I press send and send you an article, bless you, you're very kind. You don't come back with lots of edits or requests for tweaks. It's gone. That's it. You can't go back. So I very rarely kind of look at them again. Once they've gone, I love to see the layout in this month's Fly Culture. Please be good enough to publish some of my nonsense, and it's just great to see how it's interpreted, how it's visualized, how it's brought to life by Pete and of course by top designer John Ogborn. And yeah, again, the layout looks smashing. So there's always that kind of thrill once you've kissed something goodbye, but really once it's kind of gone, it's gone, and it's moving on to the next thing. Yeah.
And are you one of those people? I don't know if we've run aground here or not, because there's stuff moving past the boat, but we might run aground a bit. But I wanted to ask you, because people ask me about the podcast and they say, how many listeners do you get? And I often don't say, because that's not what this is about. I'm not using it as a money-making exercise. It's just like giving some content away and talking to people like yourself. And the only way I know the numbers is that it tells me how I get an email on a Monday morning saying how many downloads I got last week. And then I don't look again. And so that's it. But are you similar with sort of rankings on Amazon or whatever? Do you watch that? Or is that a function of watching something when it's new and then, now it's established, it's been out there for a couple of years, it's not important that it's number 1, 2, 3, or whatever it may be?
I think it's interesting because, again, I don't want to get technical, but there's kind of algorithms at play. It's just, I think while it was kind of actively moving, in terms of Amazon, there's a lot of sort of, background reporting and things like that. And it was just interesting when sometimes it would just shoot up the charts for like absolutely no apparent reason. But then again, sort of obscure fly fishing books it's quite a sort of niche category. But yeah, it is kind of interesting to see because it does sort of take on a life to its own. And sometimes, when I do promotional stuff, when you're kind enough to get me on the podcast, Pete, or sort of I have a story published somewhere, it can result in kind of little bump, but I think historically the biggest bumps I've had is on the back of podcast, on the back of promotional work, or even using Amazon adverts. That's always good to give a little bit of a boost if Father's Day is coming up, or someone wants something for the summer holiday or Christmas. But yeah, you do sort of keep an eye on it just to sort of see how it's ticking along.
Nice. And I think of yourself, James Gilbraith, Chad Van Zanten as contemporary, and there's nothing wrong with the classic fishing stories, but it's lovely that people like yourself and the people I've just mentioned have breathed air into a different sphere, haven't they, and looked and come from a completely different angle with fly fishing, and that must have been pleasing to sort of tread some new ground in some respects.
Yeah, I think so. I think with James, with Chad, and I guess myself, it's just finding your voice. You can't really, as tempting as it is to write like Hemingway, or to write like is it Thomas McGain? Yeah, Tom McGain, or someone like that. Really, really kind of genius guys. It's just about sort of finding your voice and your own influences. And I think for me, it's just a weird filter that I sort of see life and see fishing by. So that's my kind of primary area that I sort of go at it. But yeah, it's exciting to see sort of new styles of writing, new writers emerging, and people taking things in sort of different directions. Yeah, no, it's really good. There's some cool guys out there.
Well, check it out if you haven't already. It's great read, and by James and by Chad, and support any creative people if you enjoy reading about fly fishing. For me, it's really important to support what these people are doing. So check those out. And what's the plan then? Are we going to, can we from getting a running aground, we're going to get ourselves off the bottom and then move somewhere, yeah?
Well, I think this might be a metaphor for Fish Camp Fail. We've run aground, we've hit the rocks, there's no progress. But yeah, I think we better get off this week. It's weird, we've had so much rain here this week. It's absolutely tipped it down. But Chew is low. It is low. There's weird things exposed that I haven't seen before, which I need to be wary of and pay attention. But yeah, we'll work our way around the lake. We'll keep plugging away, and yeah, who knows? There's always a chance, as they say.
We're heading to another spot now to see if we can find some perch, just on the off chance. It's been a real learning curve for me. I don't have a great deal of experience of this sort of fishing. I probably fished from a boat half a dozen times in my life, and I've really enjoyed this session with Ben so far and learned a lot. One of the things that I've had to be very conscious of is the movement of the boat versus the retrieve, and I think I've found myself wanting a little bit with missing out with that a little bit. So I've watched those sorts of things. I'm probably changing too often because I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm trying to think, right, well, I should do that. And then, of course, the drift is almost over. So I've sort of missed opportunities where I've tried to think probably a little bit too much. And when I'm standing in the river, it's really easy to do because I can just wait and make my changes, and that all works out absolutely fine. But in this, you don't have the opportunity to do it, or you can do it, but it probably costs you a drift. So I've learned something on that front. I've watched Ben changed just twice really, and his setup, he went to a washing line, hooked a fish that came off, hooked another that took him around the prop, and then it's just landed one. I fished a intermediate line, and I just had a booby on there and just was tweaking it back, and at the very end where I was hanging the fly, thankfully a rainbow trout felt sorry for me and took that. So it's been great fun from that point of view, but it shows me that I need to learn a lot more about this if I'm going to do a whole lot more of it. So it's been really, really fun from that point of view to learn something new, and again, to take myself so far out of the comfort box. It's been great, and under the tutelage of Ben as well. And it's super relaxed. He's not competitive. I'm not competitive. We're chatting. We're eating loads of stuff. Just having a really good time as well. But yeah, there are things that I've noticed that because I'm not confident, I'm making changes a lot. And sometimes perhaps I should have just stuck with some of the things that I was doing because they possibly could have worked out for me. So yeah, I'm learning, and that's the really important thing for me. So that's it. My first competition in over 25 years. It's been really good fun. I think it's probably safe to say Ben and I didn't really enter into the spirit of a competition. We just sort of went fishing. But we're back and everyone's sort of tallying up what they've caught. And it sounds like there's loads of perch being caught and not many trout. It sounds like the trout fishing has been pretty hard going. Somebody had 2 brown trout and Jethro said they saw a sizable one leap in front of them. But that's been about it, and I think there's some pike caught. I don't know, it's been an outstanding day's fishing, but it's been an outstanding fun day of going fishing. That's what I've had from it. Ben, it's been great, hasn't it?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's always good being out in a boat with good company, and the weather's not really ideal for fishing, but it's ideal just for buggering about in a boat, really, isn't it? It's been nice and sunny. There's been a bit of a breeze, a bit of a ripple. I was expecting the fish to be tough, all the reports I've had kind of leading into this. And, I didn't have a Scooby-Doo hat, target perch or pike, brownies. I mean, all the years I've been fishing, Chew and Blagden, I've probably only maybe had like less than a handful of brownies or whatever. But I think, we managed to quite consistently find rainbows, which was pretty pleasing because, primarily that's what we would have been fishing for if we would have just had a day ticket. and we could have just been, flogging the water to death all day. But we found some rainbows, so that was good fun. It's always good to get a bit of action.
One of the telling things for me were the Rangers, when people were coming back, said, everyone's sort of a bit tense with competitions, and people get disqualified if they're 30 seconds late or whatever it was. And he said the vibe was really good. And I think that's exactly it, isn't it? It seems a very relaxed, friendly, fun competition, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, all of the comps I've fished in this year have been fished in a great spirit. The lovely part is being paired up with someone you never fished with before or never really known, and getting to know them, working in beautiful cooperation to get the boat in the right direction, in the right place, find the right tactics and get the fish. But yeah, again, Jethro is a very chilled guy, isn't he? And I think that's kind of reflected in the kind of overall spirit of the competition.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they've put together something really, really nice, something really, really fun. I suppose we could have really just bought a day ticket and gone fishing, but it was nice to see other people. And you can see there are many levels of this, that people were here practicing days before and everything else. And that's sort of, and there's some prizes up for grabs as well. So that's definitely worth bearing in mind, that things like that are happening. So people are watching that closely and probably want to try and win a prize. And, I kind of knew personally it wasn't going to happen, so I've just got entered into the spirit of it, had some fun, enjoyed it. We've not really given the pike a good work over, which possibly I could have done, but I've got to be honest that I've enjoyed trying to figure out how to catch the trout as well. So, and they're always my first love, I have to say, but trying to figure out how that works, and from something, and I've said the comfort box probably more than once in this recording, but that's what it's been for me. It's been a complete step out of it, something where I can figure things out. If I'm on a river, I understand what I should and could, and it's very similar, I think, if you're doing a lot of this sort of stuff, that there are subtleties and nuances, Ben, aren't there?
Yeah, there's different approaches. Some days it's not a matter of finding the sort of key to unlock the successful method. It is grinding, sticking with your confidence, flies, getting a little bit of interest, sort of figuring out that there's fish there, and then just sort of working that zone, and connecting with the fish, because sometimes on days like this, just one fish could make all the difference in the final standings. Unfortunately, it's not going to make the difference in this competition, mate, because it's a multi-species event. But as I said, in terms of the difficulty, I heard how difficult the fishing was in the days leading up to this. I think I had 3, sort of connected with some. But you had a stonker, you had a nice grown-on fish. I think I'd probably give you 3.5, 4 pounds for that. That was lovely. So you caught the best fish of the day, Pete. So kudos to you.
That's very, very kind of you. But no, this is, it symbolises what fishing's about. And the guys at Fluffchuckers they use the term community, and that's something that we feel strongly about. And they've knitted together a really nice community of people who want to go fishing and enjoy it. So the prizes have been given out. People are leaving happy. They're leaving with smiles on their faces. And one of the nice things, and I keep saying the word community, but I was watching people switch phone numbers with each other, and that's really cool. That's, for me, one of the highlights of events like this, to see this. But 5 years in, another multi-species competition put to bed. Are you happy? Can you relax?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you couldn't have asked for much more at the end of summer with the weather we had, and at times I think we had perfect fishing conditions today. 23 boats, load of happy anglers, lots of species caught. I think it was great. I just wish we had a better mathematician to sort the prizes out at the end. But no, it was great. What a wonderful way to end the season, really.
And are these, is it pride for you guys as well, seeing these guys wander away with big smiles on their faces, having had a great time on the water?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what Fluffchuckers is all about. It really is community, and just sharing this passion that we all have for fishing. Like, the competition element is there. It's a bit of fun. It's, maybe underneath it all, everybody kind of has that secret desire to win, but ultimately it's all about community, and it's just coming together and celebrating the sport, celebrating the end of summer. So yeah, no, it's just been a really good day.
Well, many congratulations on it, because we've had a ball, and as I said, as you know, we won't hit. I wanted to see how these things work and how it was put together. And I knew if you guys were behind it, the sort of feel and what it would be like, and that's exactly what it's been like. And that's good for fly fishing. That's good for our community. That's good to see people competing, but in such a friendly way. Nothing sort of swung on, well, this is it, they've been doing this, they've been doing that. It's just been really, really nice. Not what's happening you can see the body language of people while they're waiting for results, and there was none of that at all. People were laughing, smiling. So I'd like to say kudos for that. Many congratulations, and that's another one. A job well done. Ben, what do you reckon? Should we give it a go next year?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm going to get a few more flies. I'm going to practice a little bit before the next one, so I'll get more of a sense of that. But it's been brilliant. So thanks so much for putting this on, and a fantastic day.
Yeah, well, thanks, guys. Thanks for coming, Pete. Thanks for your support and showcasing what we do, and thanks for all the work that you do.
Well, we'll be heading back to Devon now, so that was a fun day. This has been the Fly Culture Podcast. Thank you so much for listening.
Can I say cue Emma, and thank you very much for the sausage rolls and cookies. They were superb.
The Fly Culture Podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly published magazine owned and run by fly anglers. When it comes to fly fishing, we've got you covered.